Okay, for those joining in person or online, this is the Economic Development Commission meeting of Thursday, June 5th, 2025.
Call to order. So first order of business is approved minutes. Second.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. And then I will turn over to our service leader who is on track.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you all. As I said, we're expecting to be joined by Chris Russo, Attorney Chris Russo Rizzio, appearing on behalf of Summit Development. They have filed an application for local zone change and special permit application for addition opposite train stations. This matter had come previously before you and before the zoning commission. Some prior iteration, not exactly the same plan, I believe, but this commission had supported it. So I've included in your packet a copy of the letter that was sent on behalf of the application. Not approved.
18.
Therefore, we are back again. There has been several other efforts to look at other development options for the site, including multifamily residential, which wasn't universally agreed with support by the surrounding neighbors. That never really made a formal application, but we had conversations with that. So, in any event, I invited Chris, and I actually invited Felix Charney, who's the principal of some
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
it's a little hard to hear you. You're going in and out. I don't know if you're close to the microphone but there's a good amount of feedback.
I would turn off the, and Chris is here. So, see, I've delayed long enough for Chris to join us. Chris will repeat everything I just said and do it much more eloquently. So, Chris, I did provide a brief introduction, although my sound, I guess, was in and out regarding the proposed zone change and special permit application for proposed two-story, 6,800 square foot office addition to 65 Station Street, and mentioned that prior application had been made for something very similar to this in the past. The commission had supported it, and I provided a copy of the letter of support from 2018 in their packet. So I do have the slides, but I think you have the ability to share screen as well, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
If you prefer to drive, that would be totally okay with me. But I do have them called up if you need.
If I remember this correctly, it's not really a change in design or anything, and there's an existing business maritime related.
It was an existing business, actually real estate related, I believe, unless that's changed in terms of tenancy. It has been in the past a multi-tenanted building, but it is an office building. The site itself, and Chris can describe this, is a split zone. And so the intent here is to make it all part of the commercial district zone, and then to add on to the existing office use with a small addition. So Chris, I'll turn things over to you. Jen, is that better? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll try to speak up. Maybe that's.
I think it was the air conditioning. I think
Okay.
it was zoning you out. Yeah.
Okay. Chris, go ahead.
Sure. So thanks for having me. Chris Russo. I'm with Russo and Rizzio LLC. We're on 10 Sasko Hill Road in Fairfield, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant owner. And the property 65 Station Street, as Mark alluded to, It's a split zoned property. And we're looking to make it one zone, which is something that, I think P and Z zoning is always, aiming to do, is to keep things, in the same zone. The split zone properties can create a lot of issues. So I think it resolves that, and but while still, providing kind of necessary buffer. And you'll see the way on the way the site's laid out, that we're putting this building as far away as we can from the residential neighbors, that are in the A district, to the south of us, and locating it, as close to train tracks as possible, and kind of in line with the existing office buildings are there. But we're very excited about it. Again, it's a proposal for a new office building. It'll be the third building on this property. There's been a lot of stuff going on in town recently. I know because I'm at P and Z every week, basically at this point. Um, but one of the things that I think might be overshadowed is that there's a pretty orderly development and balanced development going on in Southport. I don't know if y'all have been driven recently down Pequot Avenue, but you may have seen that the old office building at 250 Pequot Avenue has been demolished, and that's going to be the location of 18 dwelling units, residential dwelling units. But then here on this site, we're proposing for office, and I know that in the future you're probably going to see an application for 95 Old Post Road, which is right around the corner. That's going to have a mix of retail, small retail area, office, and 3 apartments, I believe. And then I know there's another small residential development. I think it's about 8 units that'll probably be coming down your way as well soon. And so there's kind of this nice balance of residential and office, that you really haven't seen so much in other areas, but here in Southport, in this area, it's been how it's progressing. And so, and the nice thing too about these developments is, and I'll show you on this plan, but the same with 250 Pequot, is that they have sufficient parking. So they're not going to stress the on-street parking that you have there on Pequot Avenue. So I think it's just going to bring more people down to this little, commercial node that's down there, and help support it, bring more people down there. But, developing kind of in line with the character of Southport. Just so you know, we met with Historic on this, and kind of had preliminary meetings. At one point, we looked at residential on this site, which I still think is a good option here, but we ended up exploring this office option. We thought there was demand for it, given its location, how conveniently it's located near the train station. And we met with HDC to review that, and it was well received. We have to wait until we go get all of our approvals before we formally apply to HDC. But we had this pre-app meeting and it was well received. I've also met with some of the groups that are in that area, just to kind of let them know this was coming. And I'm supposed to go back to meet Southport Conservancy and Sasquatch, which have now joined together, I guess. And I'm going to go meet with them to show them the plans as well. And with that, I'll kind of get into it. So what you see here in front of you is, you can see the property highlighted, and the overwhelming bulk of it is in the commercial zone. And so what we're proposing is to change it from with this little sliver that's down here that borders a big chunk of it borders this DRD, and to change that from the A zone to the NDD zone. There's some mislabels here of the DCD, but it's the NDD. And it backs up to Southport Congregational Church, their parking lot, which is kind of a vacant area. for large chunks of time. So we think just changing the zone, it's gonna allow us to still have buffer area, but really what it does is allow us to put parking there to support these office buildings. So the next I'll show you, if I can flip. Hold on, I gotta 1 second. Okay, so yeah, here's the site plan. So if you know the site, its entrance is here off of Station Street. Here's the train tracks, then parking spaces here, and then there's a road that runs here and goes underneath the train tracks. There's 2 existing office buildings. There's a 2-story office building that's here on the corner, and then I think this is the original building, the old original building that's here right up against this northern property line. And simply what we're looking to do is add another office building here on this side. Again, it's located in what is currently the DCD portion of the NDD. I'm sorry, I keep misstating that. NDD portion of the property, and as far away as we can, you could see some of the residential properties that are down here. So as far away as we can, really bordering this road that's here, and then the Southport Congregational parking lot. What it allows us to do, and it's tough for you to probably see there, but the parking lot essentially ends in this area right here currently. And with the change of the zone, we're able to add additional parking and support this new office building. This pocket right here that's down the corner it's a pretty matured like a natural buffer. There's a lot of tall trees in there, so we're looking to leave that to kind of act as continue as a buffer to these properties, and it gives us enough parking to comply with the regulations and support the office building. There's plenty of parking open there now. Frankly, if you go there, there's tons of open parking. But this gives us, it conforms with the regulations, just to ensure, definitely at certain times of the day, on-street parking is kind of vital down there at Pequot Ave, and so we don't want to put any stress on that. So this will give us plenty of parking. I could switch to some renderings. So you can see here, this is the existing building on the corner. This is the building that's in the middle. And back here is the proposal for the new building. It's same design, same character. This was, a lot of our discussion with HDC, obviously, was, revolved around the design of it. It was well received. And to kind of maintain that character on this property.
Main change is really just you're building within the commercial zone. It's just changing the parking a little bit in what is the zone.
It's new. Yeah, it's new construction of an existing to extend the office use, but to make sure that the entire parcel is within the business district. So
yeah,
I'm just curious what the ground for denying it was.
Well, in the past, these things are like a zone change is a discretionary act on the part of the commission. So they have to make some findings, which Chris will probably make as part of the record. How this application is consistent with our regulations and our plan of development. But that's, obviously at their discretion. So I think in the past, there was some neighborhood pushback. I don't recall where Southport Conservancy or Sasquatch was on the subject. Hopefully those issues have been, those concerns have been alleviated at this point, but that was the issue. Obviously.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time.
It was a lot of parking. It was a lot of parking and traffic management, right, as I recall.
Yeah, and we've spent a lot of time meeting. We've been out to the site twice with HDC to make sure design-wise that they were comfortable with it. And and then meeting with the neighborhood group, letting them know about it and showing them what we're looking at. And then again, we're going to go back to them prior to the P&Z hearing, which given the backlog, I don't know when that's when that's gonna happen. It might not be until September. But we're
Probably.
we're supposed to go try and meet with them at their next meeting. And and I think that'll help, and hopefully address everybody's concerns about parking. Just so you know some details about the building, it's just under 3,500 per floor, 3,500 square feet per floor. So comes in a little under 7,000. It's a 2-story building. The existing one that's right here in the middle is about 4,500, and this building is a little over the smaller building, the 2-story that's on the corner is a little over 2,000.
I'll just note that Scott Kaminsky, right?
Yes.
Has joined us from some Summit Development. He's in the room. Is this tenanted? I mean, do you have a prospective tenant, or is this spec?
It's speculative right now.
Spec, which is unusual this day and age.
It is, but our office is the middle building there. And we own 200 Pequot, and we are developing 250 Pequot as well. And so we kind of have a good feel of the office market in the area, which is, there is demand for it.
It's always been like boutique office.
Yeah, it'll probably be 3 or 4 small tenants in there.
Yeah, and so this is just the floor plan. You could see, there's multiple entrances into it. Again, this is the top is the train track side, but there's a sidewalk that links it to the other office buildings. But there's also an entrance here from the parking lot. There's a little patio courtyard area that is next to where the church parking lot is, and it's got an elevator. And basically just set up like it with this main area and then these, offices all off to the side, and it's the same on the second floor. So that's basically it. We think it's something, design wise, you can see the elevations here. Very pretty building, a lot of windows, a lot of transparency, which is always great. And, something also that we think matches the character of the other buildings in this neighborhood.
Pretty modest in scale, and it's
I'm
not
surprised,
it's
though,
not a residential application. So
I think the
in
commission will be
that
happy
regard,
with that.
it'll probably be a welcome change for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah.
To consider something other than a set aside or residential development application. Questions?
No, I mean, I remember this at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised 7 years later, we're talking about
Well,
it again.
as Chris alluded to, we've kind of gone through an evolution on this. We looked at, I know Felix had looked at various residential options for the site before pivoting back to office. And I think, from our perspective, this is a welcome change. We have no issues in terms of enthusiastically recommending it for your consideration.
No, and presumably, I'm happy to endorse and I guess motion to vote if.
Yeah, I think a motion to support the application would be in order, and then what I'll do is I'll update the letter essentially, and obviously take into account, the changes in terms of the square footage, and maybe embellish it a little bit more to reference some of the specific elements by which this does satisfy portions of our POCD and zoning regulations. Your support.
Motion to support?
I agree.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you,
Thank you
Scott.
all.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time this morning, and we'll see this one through, and hopefully have this building up.
Yeah,
in the near
yeah.
future.
Knock on wood.
I'm involved this time.
You
That's the
are,
difference.
you've been persistent. 250 Pequot took a long time
It did.
to get the support of the neighborhood and to get through. So hopefully that augurs well for this process too.
Yeah, no, that outreach pays off in the end, and so
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
We've been doing the same approach with this one, and that's why I have high hopes for this to go all the way through.
Super. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Scott, you're more than willing to stay if you want, but you don't need to. But I appreciate you coming out. So nice to meet you, Scott.
Nice to meet you all.
Take care. Thanks for stopping.
So we'll go back to item 5. We haven't, Steve and Ken and I haven't had opportunity to meet, so I don't think this will furnish, I'm not furnishing any business, no report this morning unless people have questions.
I write myself a note to follow up.
Yeah, that's
I
okay.
failed to follow up.
We'll figure out a time over the summer months. We do probably want to talk about our summer schedule before we close. I'll mention a few things upcoming. We do have an announcement Tuesday of next week, the 10th, at 11 a.m. All of you are invited. It should take place on Sherman Green. In the event of inclement weather, we'll be in the Shoe Community Theater. We'll be having the Lieutenant Governor, Susan Beisowitz, and Liz Shapiro, as the director of the Connecticut Office of the Arts, will be here to announce state recognition of the Fairfield Cultural District, which has been a long time in coming. We applied late last year. State did have a site visit and tour of the district in the spring, and we're pleased that we met all the criteria for state recognition. So if you're able to attend, you're more welcome to do so. That's next Tuesday, the 10th at 11 a.m. Some musical entertainment, some food, some giveaways, as well as speeches from the various politicians that will be there. So you're all invited to attend if you.
I would be there, but I'll be en route to Boston.
Okay. I did want to mention too that on the 18th of June, Jen Anderson and I will be taking part in a panel discussion as part of the Connecticut Main Street Center's State of Maine workshop. That's in the morning. If any of you are interested in attending, let me know. I'm sure I'll send out the registration information, but it's in the Mattituck Museum in Waterbury. But Jen, Matt Ostreicher, and I will be talking about partnerships in terms of how they have helped support the revitalization of our downtown areas. In Fairfield's case, you'll recall, the closing of the Borders bookstore and then Fairfield University's investment in that to create the Fairfield University bookstore and now Fairfield University store, and subsequently the purchase and revitalization of 1720 Post Road for the marketing department, some other administrative offices there, but also the Arts and Minds Initiative program through Fairfield U. So again, you're all invited to take part if you're interested in that. I will send the registration information, and then on the 21st of June, we will have the 8th annual Fairfield Music Day, part of a global celebration of music that began in Paris, France in 1982. This is our 8th year. We're one of the biggest in the country, actually, the biggest in the state, the biggest in the country, I think top 10. It's pretty impressive for Fairfield in terms of number of performance, number of venues, number of artists performing, all those metrics. So we have a pretty outsized influence or impact there relative to our peers. I'll mention a couple other events. I did hand out for those of you in person, but joining. We do have our new rack cards for summer events throughout the year. We will be presenting with the Chamber of Commerce, the Fairfield Sidewalk Sale and Street Fair on the 19th of July. On that, and I did want to call your attention to a change in our calendar. We are moving Fairfield Restaurant Week to the last week in August. This was something that has been requested by our restaurateurs. We did had a couple of comments. The fall tends to be a very busy time for restaurants. There's a lot of activities and events here in town with alumni and parents' weekends at the two universities. And frankly, I guess the restaurant staff are a little exhausted after all these promotional events throughout the fall. So we were asked to look at changing the calendar so that we run two events, two restaurant weeks, one in the summer, one in the wintertime. And the intent is consistent with our original vision, which is to help restaurants when they're less busy. So this will now be August 21st, or August 25th through September 7th. So it's part of move-in over Labor Day weekend back to school. But this is a change in our calendar, so just wanted to call that to your attention as well. That's it for our calendar. We'll mention a few things in terms of development sites. Justin had mentioned 1320 Kings Highway, which was approved by Planning and Zoning, the Bank of America building, which is demolished to make way for a small, single-story, multi-tenanted retail building. Three food service operations, one with a drive-through. So that was approved. Again, I'm sure the Planning and Zoning Commission was happy to consider something other than residential these days.
Interesting though, like all the pushback you have from Chick-fil-A there and the drive-through.
Well, I think in this case, they
Right,
did not
that's
indicate prospective tenants. Whereas in that case, the tenancy was known and probably worked to their disadvantage. So I think people did. We have a similar developer, I think the same developer, and I think he.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. I'm sure you will probably not be surprised by the end tenants in that building when it officially is announced and they're in that space, but nice to see something go through smoothly. I
don't think the fears of the Chick-fil-A ever came to fruition.
No, I don't think
No,
so
it
either. You
didn't.
know, one of the issues there is that site much different than this Norwalk site. It's much larger, about 50% larger, much more in the way of parking. Obviously, they didn't include a drive-through as part of their application. They did initially, but that was scaled back to win approval. But yeah, we
I
haven't.
have seen them in multiple locations where it is. I was in Salt Lake City and the Chick-fil-A there I was there for like 3 days. Every day, the line just blocking traffic and entrances. I could see why people.
Yeah, you'd think at some point you'll reach a happy equilibrium as they add more Chick-fil-A franchises or stores rather. So each location probably will take a certain amount of business away from other locations.
That Norwalk one was.
The Norwalk one, I've been there, it is miserable. It has backed
It's,
up traffic.
I've never
so
been, but I've heard
I
Norwalk.
can appreciate the concerns. Yeah.
My kids used to drive down there, like,
Yep.
11 o'clock at night.
But they're adding new stores. There's a new one proposed for Shelton. So again, to the extent to which, you're drawing traffic from the valley down to this store, they'll eventually have a place closer to home to visit. So it doesn't seem to be hurting the business at all. That's moving ahead. I did want to mention 219 Ash Creek Boulevard, the Fairfield Blackrock train station development site. It's now called Creekside, I believe. Creekside at Fairfield Blackrock. First building was TCO. They got a temporary CO, expecting a final CO on or about the 20th of this month. And they're beginning to move in residents. It's a 70-unit apartment building that's there as part of a planned multi-building development and for the overall site. Across the way at 81 Blackrock Turnpike, which is a brownfield site. You'll recall that we did secure a brownfield grant, which the developer read the terms and conditions and said, thanks, but no thanks. They're planning to start work within the next couple of months. They're at about 75% on their design and construction plans. Financing is in place, so they're and we'll be moving ahead, a building permit, starting that work.
Been any impact? I noticed the train station downtown, the
Very
parking lot.
full, yeah.
It's much more full, but still a lot of empty spots.
Well,
I just remember-
we're certainly seeing more commuter traffic. I mean, Kenny might be able to attest to this. But people are, more of a hybrid situation if there's, so people are going back into the office and commuting by rail. So I've seen traffic pick up. There are spaces, but it's much
It's definitely moving fuller, yeah.
than it has been. And that's true at Fairfield BlackRock too. But we don't anticipate any issues in terms of construction impacts on that. Again, the infrastructure, the roadway infrastructure around that area was enhanced back when the original application went through, which called for a 2 million square foot office building development. Which, the traffic patterns for that are much different, more concentrated at peak times. So the infrastructure is in place. Sewer capacity is a separate issue, but we're taking that on and that work to replace a portion of the East Trunk Sewer is again slated to start work next week or so. Still working through some easements with the property owner. But otherwise, the contractor's in place and the funding's ready in place and he's ready to go. So about 18 months to do that, 18 to 24 months. So I'll pause there if there are any other questions. I know the other one that we had supported that they're moving ahead with their renovations is the Nest, the Early Childhood Center, Greenfield Hill. So there is a appeal pending on the approval, but have closed on the property, started the renovations, all of which I guess ostensibly is at risk, but I guess you would then surmise that they feel pretty confident that their position will be held. Zoning's approval of the site will. I will pause there if there's other questions of things of note that you've noticed as you've driven around town or questions on development.
Mark, I have a question, related to the state just passing the, I don't know, is it affordable housing, et
There's a
cetera?
housing bill, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting questions just from people around, just what exactly does that mean for Fairfield? Can you just, I don't know, maybe it's just me and I don't mean to bore everyone else's time, but
No, I
like
saw
what?
the headline and I had
I
didn't have time to read it, so
and read about it.
very topical.
Distinct difference.
Yeah, it's hard to decipher because I know there was, both opposition and support. So I don't know. Are there sort of like the elevator response for Fairfield specifically?
The short answer is we're still reviewing the final bill that passed and is waiting the governor's signature.
Okay,
We don't think there's a tremendous impact in terms of the work that we're currently doing, or there are a couple things that we noticed that, for example, there's a provision, or there was a provision, I'm not sure what survived the final passage, but allows for certain types of middle housing in commercial districts. So as of right, a conversion from an existing commercial use to allow for up to 9 units of residential. And so those issues, we obviously, there's opportunities to do office to residential conversion. 60 Katona was a good example of that, where we had a Class C office building and it was a good candidate for residential, given its location and the nature of the configuration of the building. But we've also been concerned about developments, particularly in our downtown area, that don't have a commercial component to them, a mixed-use first ground floor commercial component to it. There's also a lot of discussion about parking, elimination of parking requirements. And again, you know, most developers that are very thoughtful and are going to propose something that they could sell or rent. So they need to be responsive to the marketplace in terms of what tenants or sellers or buyers are looking for these residential type units. But again, I don't know if it's, you know, the planning, Connecticut APA took a position that said, well, you know, theoretically that's fine, but there should be some rationale behind the developer's application. They're proposing, making an application and provide no parking. There should be some evidence to support that. And you know, you've seen news reports next door in the city of Bridgeport relative to an application that was approved without any provision for parking. They're securing parking off-site some other location, and now they're revisiting the question. So I guess we're still looking at it. We don't think that it has a tremendous impact because, especially the TOD elements of it, a lot of our TOD overlay district already meets kind of the baseline criteria, we believe, but certainly going to be some impact, relatively modest, but we still want to take a closer look at the final bill. We'll deal with it. The other thing is a fair share, the fair share component, calling it town stake the lead, but now as part of our affordable housing plan, we'll have to specifically plan for or call out how we're going to plan for a certain number of housing units within the region. Again, based on the activity from as of late, we've already more than satisfied, I think, I think we've done our fair share. I'll put it that way. In terms of the housing units that have been approved and authorized to be built. And whether they are in fact built is another thing, but we have done, I think, our share, pulled our
Is
weight.
it a case of moving the finish line to this?
Well, and then again, there's a carrot component. So the governor had proposed, and there's elements of that within the bill, an easier pathway for communities if they make certain things in their zoning to get a moratorium. We already have a moratorium, which is good through 2029. If I have anything to do about it, we're going to extend that moratorium for another 5 years beyond that, based on the housing units in production or approved in the pipeline within the next 4 years. So I don't know, again, that has a tremendous amount of impact, but there's a mix of these carrots and sticks. I think it'll have more impact on other communities that haven't done the work that we have done, but we still need to take a closer look at the final bill.
And they approve, and is it true the approval for these proposed developments would not be with planning and zoning anymore? Is it the state that?
No, and it still needs, even as of right, requires some type of compliance application. As I understand it, talking to the town planner, it may limit public hearings or,
Okay,
you know, curtail that process somewhat, but it still needs to go through a review by the local planning and zoning commission.
okay. Maybe the commission would appreciate no hearings.
I think, you know, in some respects, you know, again, the TOD overlay is a good example. We amended, based on a plan that had public support, amended our regulations to allow for higher density around the Fairfield Black Rock train station as part of a mixed-use development. The applications that have come before the Planning and Zoning Commission have not generated a lot of public interest or testimony. So, you know, part part of doing proper planning is to do that up front, to make sure you're understanding what the community needs and wants, and to then adjust your regulations accordingly, so that, again, there are no surprises for anyone. So, yeah, we could have a more streamlined process there, because one would argue that we've already done the planning work, the public's reviewed and said, yeah, we're good with that. And, the applications that have come forth have not generated a lot of interest, testimony from the public, and they've all been unanimously or near unanimously approved. So maybe it would be beneficial to have a more streamlined process in that case. Well, that's it.
The process is part of the deterrence.
Was that?
The process is part of the deterrence.
Well, it hasn't served that purpose, because we're going through some very deeply contentious public hearings on set-aside applications that beat the moratorium application deadline, so. But we're going to do a more in-depth review as soon as we get the final copy of the bill, and then
Okay.
I'll report back. I have to we're going to talk about it at the Affordable Housing Committee meeting too, coming up, so just haven't had a chance to, when got actually the final bill. So sooner
Okay.
piecing stuff together.
What's the
Thank you.
duration of that bill? Is there a time component associated with it?
No, there's no I don't believe there are any sunset provisions. So this modifies, this does put some limits on local planning and zoning as to what they can consider,
Indefinitely.
what they can regulate, unless there is, changes to the bill, to the state statutes at some point in the future.
Wow.
I anticipate there may be, always with these things, I shouldn't say always, but oftentimes there are unintended consequences, and there's an opportunity to rewrite pieces of it that don't quite work as well as what was intended. So I can anticipate that might be the case. I mean, the parking regulations, in theory, again, kind of makes sense. Developers typically are not going to want to cut off their nose to spite their face. They're going to want to put a product is rentable, and you can't do a building without some provision for parking, especially in a suburban town like Fairfield. But to just trust developers implicitly to do the right thing is not something in my lexicon either. So, I think there does need to be some rationale behind it. And, again, some of the thinking behind it was the parking is all over the map. Individual communities regulate parking so radically different than one another. There's no rhyme or reason to our regulations either, which we have pointed out. So, but this kind of goes in a much different direction. Other questions?
Property across from Chick-fil-A, the former gas station on the corner.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
They're renovating it for food service use. So there is, they've been working very slowly. Part of the reason is it's in a flood zone, believe it or not. So the whole building needs to be flood proofed. So there's quite extensive site and exterior modifications necessary, trying to keep kind of the facade consistent with the historic use, but it eventually will be a restaurant.
A restaurant.
Small restaurant, deli. So, I did reach out to the property owner there, ask how it's going, but he says things are going okay, so I guess we're good.
That's Phelps, that's the same as Bob's Shopping Center there?
No, it's not Phelps.
Oh, okay.
Boy, yeah, the Phelps took a position in opposition to.
Oh, okay,
So
gotcha.
it had to be, so, yeah. they were,
Okay. Then there's that, all right.
Still no action on the diner on Black Rock Turnpike?
No, I've, various realtors and myself have reached out to the ownership. One of the patriarch of the family passed away. We've reached out to, a long time ago at this point, we reached out to surviving family members to there's a lot of interest in it, but no one's been able to, have a, to my knowledge, have a good conversation with the folks. So I guess,
Wow.
it's
It is. It's such a perfect
it's one of those things that's
spot.
in, probably there's some dispute within the family in terms of the direction to go. That's what
I mean, such an anchor up there for,
It is, yeah. It
Yeah.
has been.
Yeah, there's a lot, if that was on the market, there'd be a lot of interest in that. So I get calls all the time. So it's probably time I'll take another run at it, see if they'll return my calls or emails or, talk to anyone else. Try not to take offense.
a little bit of a rabbit hole, but just like the federal budget, just like I just read, like, with the college university market, just some of the, if it goes through, and I mean, who knows what's gonna change when it goes through the Senate, but a lot of trepidation on if it's passed.
Taxing endowments and things like that.
Just for, like, shifts in Medicare.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot of
concern.
concern. And I don't know, you guys have obviously looked at what's pending with the federal legislation. I don't think it has much of an impact on Fairfield, but.
No, our international population is relatively small compared to most institutions, primarily in our School of Engineering and our graduate programs. So we're seeing a little dip there, but for the most part, we're pretty immune. We're not a research institution, so because of that, we don't get a significant amount of research funding. So pretty minimal impact.
One of the things I read this week is just changing in the Pell Grant funding, requiring kids to be full-time students to be able to be eligible, and you have to take 7.5 credits, which is 3/4 of kids in community colleges or technical schools are part-time. And that
They have
will
to work.
And going from, like, there isn't a lot of 7.5 credits, that puts you into a minimum of 3 courses, and so many are dependent on the Pell Grant funding. It's potentially devastating for those community technical schools.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's a lot
And there's just
of
things,
issues with it, for sure.
there's a lot of,
We don't, as a community, we don't receive a lot of federal dollars. So direct impact in terms of our budget process is pretty small, but there's a lot of things that would change if that were approved. Sure, it would, I think, have a significant impact on certain populations, for sure. We have been monitoring, we do get block grant funds. No change in the upcoming program year, but there have been discussions about zeroing that out. Obviously, our grant is relatively small. It's less than $500,000. But, this is a pretty popular program across the country, states as well as red states. A lot of cities and towns receive funding through this program, and it helps meet community needs. And based on the community's priorities. And so I've always felt that there'd be a lot of pushback associated with trying to eliminate that program, but I guess we'll see. It's for actually the upcoming program year, we did receive an award notice, appropriation, so we're planning, but beyond that, who knows?
this is anecdotal and not really germane to this, but I was at an event, I was talking to someone with the Food and Drug Administration. Out of 94,000 people, they just randomly laid off 15,000 people. Like no rhyme or reason. They were already like max capacity for inspections and stuff like that. And very nice guy, very nonpartisan about it, but he was.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about food safety myself.
I did ask him, like, what is morale like? He's like, imagine the worst case possible scenario, and said then multiply it by 10.
Wow, I can imagine,
Why
right?
not?
Yeah.
Of course it would.
It's like cutting of like, he's like, I knew a lot of people in the Peace Corps. And this is not germane, but like,
Yep.
just, there's so many things that are unknown, and it's just, man, for the
Those are hard. Not where they are.
Because they're not looking at the individual jobs either. They're just taking a chunk of people and saying, okay, you've got it, this 10% is going to go. It doesn't matter what their positions were, what their responsibilities were.
I
On a
just have a
separate,
question, I'm sorry, and Circle Inn and the
Yeah.
hotel and the train station, any updates on either?
So the Circle Inn, the mixed-use development was approved. It was promptly appealed.
Oh.
So, based on that, they are in the process of considering the Plan B, which is an exclusively much larger residential development for the site under 830G. They have largely
Going into that.
completed the public hearing, but I think the public hearing is technically still open. Hopefully will be completed at the next meeting, then voted on. Again, our preference, as we stated in our letter, was for the mixed-use development with the hotel.
yeah.
So it'll just have to work its way out. It's optimistic in that some other projects that have been appealed that were in settlement conversations, both with the folks who appeal, and since a couple instances was neighbors in town, so you might be able to work something out here, hopefully. Allow that to go forward in a timely fashion, but.
Mark, can you say who appealed that one?
This was neighbors, neighborhood group, hired Joel Green, Attorney Green, who's been doing a lot of opposition work on many of these applications. So,
And presumably they'd prefer a large residential development?
well, I'm sure they would prefer option C, which is none of the above, but as I pointed out, that's not typically on the table. So it's, I think it's a binary choice. It's either option A or option B. Option C is really not an option. So I think at some point, we'll get down to what those real issues are, and perhaps there's some slight tweaks that can be made to the preferred development plan for the site that would help alleviate some of those concerns, but it'll just take a little bit more time. You had another?
No, it was just the hotel at the train station.
Well, I've talked to the people with the money and the developer. Said, the next building is the hotel, right? And so we're
Waiting on that, okay.
still working on that. I said, well, that's the sequence that was approved.
How many rooms would that be? Do we know?
Well, it was proposed at 118. I think what we've talked about is actually making it bigger. Because they had proposed it as part of a multi-story building with a couple levels of office. And I said, well, frankly, you can scrap the office, make the hotel rooms bigger. It still satisfies your commercial component, helps meet the demand and interest within the community, and we can accommodate the office someplace else on the site. So, yeah, they were interested in that. Again, it remains to be seen what the brand is.
That's right.
There's, even within each brand, there's different levels. So again, we're looking for something that would be appropriate for the community.
And no
do
event
event space
space? Yeah. Any event space, no?
We don't know.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Could move office space.
I agree.
It would be hard to, I wouldn't want to go out there right now because where they're at is they had shown a concept plan, changes to the master plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission about a year ago, but haven't made a formal application. So we've been talking about the timing of that next step, the application. Part of what they wanted to do was finish first building, which they have done. They can say, hey, we can actually deliver on what we said we're going to do. We're going to build this building, but now we want to make some changes based on market conditions, which have changed. We want to reorient the site, add some more residential, and change that building to hotel use. But we haven't seen the final application floor.
Any
So that's where we're at.
further news on whether the speed cameras are going ahead in September like they originally?
I don't, but I can ask.
I know there was a big question about the budget related to that.
And the town's taking a survey now on safety and traffic and all of.
It is, and there should be an announcement very shortly on a new initiative, the Safe Streets Alliance, which is focused on trying to build awareness around the rules of the road for not just motorists, but bicyclists and pedestrians, and try to get everyone to kind of slow down, but also improve safety for all users.
A lot more scooters these days. The high school,
Yep.
they come
They
flying.
come flying by.
Yeah, scooters, bikes, electric bikes.
Nothing to protect.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh, some
so,
people
yeah.
like them.
Well, I noticed the questions in that questionnaire were skewed in some fashionable way.
Well, I'm told that the plan here is to survey attitudes both before and after the intervention. So presumably you'll see the same series of questions in October after they've done their we've done our public outreach and awareness campaigns. We'll see how it goes.
Sold in the comments.
Good.
The only other thing I'll mention is, I know we've taken a position in support of, and Colin's not here, but on the RTM, we will be presenting, I believe, to the RTM, the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority, our participation in that. I believe they're going to have an informational session, a presentation by David Corus, the Executive Director of the CMDA, at the June meeting of the RTM. And then they will be having a public hearing, which is required, on the 10th of July. And after that, taking up so I'll keep you posted on that. And then, Bev, I don't know if I know you have a couple things coming up.
Oh, just quickly, on June 22nd in the old Town Hall Green, we're having our annual Fairfield Dog Days coming up. That is from 11 to 4 p.m. and that's in partnership with Pet Pantry. So that's always a fun event, and they're getting bigger and bigger each year, and more people attend with their dogs. And we are a dog-friendly, I think, town, if there's such a category. But anyway, so that's a nice community event, a few food trucks and things for the dogs to do. So that will be happening on the 22nd of June. And then our Chamber Awards dinner is on June 26th at Black Rock Yacht Club. And we will be honoring ShopRite, Hartford Health, YMCA, Be Chocolate, and Colony Pizza. Hartford Health will be economic impact for their partnership and idea to come together with Memorial Sloan Kettering. The opening day on that was gigantic. There were a ton of people there. The building is fantastic. ShopRite, more of business of the year. They do their mission. They have an incredible mission of giving back food across the United States, not only in Fairfield, but a lot of recycling. They're very green. And we're having our first restaurant of the year, and that is Colony Pizza. And their mission is circling around police, fire, EMS, veterans. Each of their pizza stores have, a wall for veterans, and it's a very deep, heartfelt mission for Colony Pizza. And I never realized how involved they are with all of that. So all good chamber members, Be Chocolat will be entrepreneur, and a nonprofit this year will be the YMCA for all that they do and bring to the community of Fairfield. So we're excited about that. So that is June 26th. If you'd like to attend, go to our website. And that's it for the chamber right now.
I don't have anything else, Mr. Chair. Do you have any other?
Do we want to talk about a summer meeting?
Oh, yeah, I did mention that at the beginning. I guess that would be. So in the past, we have not always had
August.
in August. We can.
Why we've gotten together.
Sometimes July is more of like a social gathering. I don't have a boat, so it won't be.
Uh-oh.
Won't be
Do you have a
boat
friend?
this year? But we could have a social get together if you'd like. just up to you. But I just want to, I'm not planning to have an August meeting.
Send,
Does it have to be at the beginning of July, right? It could be anytime?
We can have it anytime. We
Later is better.
because, you know, it's around our regular scheduled meeting around the
Yeah, the 4th.
Independence Day holiday, so.
any
Yeah.
thoughts around like a new venue in town too? That we've done that? as
Well, I mean, I always like the illicit for happy hours.
We haven't done that, right?
We have not done that, but I know they have wine.
I know they have wine, yeah.
Let's finally do illicit, that'd be good.
Maybe, you know, I could have, one of the owners just say a few words about how things have been. I know Fairfield Youth's done some partnership with illicit brewing, so, you know, it'd be good to check in with them, and see how things are going, and.
Sounds like we have a plan. So we just need to pick a date.
All right, well, I'll check with their availability and we'll have a date and I'll get back in touch with all of you.
All right.
Great.
Sounds good.
That's July social gathering and then no August meeting and I guess a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, that would be great.
Motion.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, take care.